Hello and welcome on behalf of Syngenta to this event on Accelerating Innovation, organised under the auspices of the Forum for the Future of Agriculture as part of Solutions Week. My name is Jackie Davis and I'll be moderating a series of short sessions as we discuss the role of innovation in delivering a sustainable food system, helping farmers to meet the challenges they face in today's changing world. And we'll be zooming in on different areas of innovation, more about that later on. And then we'll have a final panel to try and pull all the strands of our discussions together and look to the way forward in order to accelerate innovation and consider why this matters so much. There will be opportunities under each area of innovation that we look into for your questions. Please, if you have a question, use the chat button on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see at the bottom it says enter question here. Please write your question. It would be really helpful if you could tell me who you are and who you represent. And also, please be as brief as possible so I can see at a glance what your question is and who it is for. So we have a lot of ground to cover in the next 90 minutes, so let's crack straight on. And I'm delighted to welcome, to set the context for our sessions this afternoon, Robert Renrick, who is Syngenta's Head of Business Sustainability for Europe, Africa and the Middle East region. Robert, great to have you with us. Let's jump straight in. As I mentioned, today we're talking about the importance of innovation to support sustainability. Why did you choose this as the theme for our discussion today, and what do you hope will come out of today's event?
Well, thank you very much, Jackie. We chose accelerating innovation because we really want to share our vision for agriculture in Europe. Right now, agriculture is being seen as a problem, and we really think we can make it into both a sustainability and a climate solution. When we talk about sustainability, we're talking about all three elements of this, which is economic sustainability for farming, social sustainability for farming communities, as well as protecting the natural environment. We've got to protect the livelihoods and competitiveness of farmers in Europe, help them become more climate resilient, help them improve biodiversity in and around their farms, but most importantly also help them feed people at an acceptable cost. We also want to see a lower carbon agriculture, one where we can produce more from actually using less. But to do this, farmers need the tools to be able to do the jobs, cope with the challenges they face. We see climate disasters right now in our own backyard in southern Europe with droughts this year again. So climate's there, new pests, diseases, and also adapting to the legislation as well.
And the overarching title of this event is that rather clever play on words, Accelerating Innovation. Why is it so important, Robert, to move faster if we're going to address these challenges that you were just highlighting?
Well, the sense of urgency is because the goals set out by the European Union in the Farm to Fork actually set 2030 as a deadline for achieving the goals. And that's only 7 seasons away. And actually quite a lot of what we're going to be talking about are new things to do on farms using new products like biologicals, regenerative agricultural practices, as well as getting the technology to market in that time. And we need a policy environment to help us do that. So it is urgent and we need to really get moving.
So you're talking up there about, and we're going to hear about some of the things that you're doing in this area. But what for you do you see as the most important issues that we need to address if we're going to create what I might call an enabling environment, the best possible conditions in order for that innovation to flourish and indeed to accelerate its development and uptake?
Well, we have to have a policy and regulatory environment which actually permits this to happen. Right now, to register a biological pesticide, biocontrol, takes exactly the same time as it takes to register a chemical, which is over 10 years. So even with the best of intentions, under the current rules, in Europe, we won't have any new tools, biological tools registered before the middle of the next decade. The seeds agenda with new genomic techniques, CRISPR, which you're going to hear all about later, actually really, there are policy proposals on the table, but this may be delayed. And so it's really difficult to get innovation into the hands of farmers. And also getting agreement on what sort of regenerative agricultural practices and what tools and what innovations can be used is really going to be helpful. And we really do have to have the policymakers on board and aligned.
And you said there over 10 years, up to 10 years, sorry, to get a new product onto the market. But you also mentioned previously 7 growing cycles, which
Mm.
suggests there is a serious mismatch between the speed at which you can move and the speed at which we need to move. And what will be the consequences, therefore, Robert, if we don't address these issues, if we can't get that environment right and in order to accelerate innovation?
Well, climate change is not going away. We have to reduce the carbon impact of agriculture urgently as a part of getting to net zero, as a part of coping with the climate emergency that we've got. And really, farmers in Europe are going to be left at a totally competitive disadvantage compared to farmers in the United States, Latin America, for example, who do have these tools and will have these innovations. And just to give you a bit of information, Jackie, it takes 2 to 3 years to register biocontrol in the USA compared to 10 years here.
So, one of the questions perhaps for later, what lessons do we learn from that? How do we make sure that we have that competitive edge, as you say? Just trying to pull all of this together, Robert. And as I've said, and you've been mentioning, we are going to look into different areas. We're going to look at seeds. We're going to look at biologicals. We're going to look at the whole concept and application of regenerative agriculture. If you look at all of these and all the issues that you've mentioned, what do you believe is the key to a really effective approach to accelerating the innovation required to deliver that sustainability at the scale and at the speed that's going to be required?
Well, we absolutely need to accelerate what we're doing, but also, get the changes in the external environment to do this. And the scale is really important. I think that's this is not about experiments. This is about doing something on a massive scale on millions of hectares. So with 7 growing cycles, actually we've got to go as fast as possible to make this to make this happen, and actually try and sort of repeat and learn as we go. Use data and data analytics to actually help us sort of understand what's going on a farm, so they can actually use that data to receive advice in real time and actually improve the success of their operations.
Robert, thank you so much for that. I know that you're very committed to delivering on these goals. We're going to hear a lot more about those innovations in those key areas, but we're also going to continually discuss the challenges, what we need to do in order to realize their full potential to make a huge difference. I know for Syngenta, this is a very important agenda. In terms of where you go from here, any final message to our audience about how you see the way forward?
Well, really, we do need to work faster. We need to work together with innovators, policymakers, farmers, and everybody together. This is our vision. You're going to have explained a really fantastic innovation agenda. This is our innovation. This is what every one of us in Syngenta is working to do. And we're absolutely committed to delivering on this agenda.
Thank you. And also want to come back on that issue of partnership, of collaboration, of how you are working with and how everyone can work together most effectively to address the
Absolutely.
issues we've been talking about. Robert, thank you so much for being with us today. And we're looking forward to very rich discussions throughout the next, now slightly less than 90 minutes. Thanks very much.
Well, have a
So,
great session. Thank you.
thanks, Robert. So, as we've said, we're going to look at 3 areas in turn. We're going to look at accelerating innovation in seeds, then we will turn our attention to biologicals, then to regenerative agriculture, and then, as I mentioned, that final wrap up panel to try and chart the way forward. Don't forget, if you have any questions for our speakers, please do put them in the chat. keep them brief, and it's really great if you tell me who you are and who you represent. But let us move straight on to our first topic today, accelerating innovation in seeds. And joining me for this session, delighted to welcome Charlie Baxter, Global Head of Regulatory and Product Safety at Syngenta Seeds, and Sarah Iveson, Head of Field Crop Seeds Development for Europe, Africa, Middle East region. Very warm welcome to you both. We're going to hear a presentation. Charlie's going to kick us off. Sarah will then take over, and then we'll have a few minutes, I hope, at the end for some of your questions. So, Charlie, over to you.
Thanks, Jackie. And I'm very pleased today to join you from our RTP Innovation Centre in North Carolina. So Robert talked a lot about innovation across the agriculture sector, and I'm very proud to work on a site which delivers some key innovations to our seeds business, both through conventional breeding and the use of biotechnology. And I want to just spend a few minutes today talking to you about new genomic technologies, or plant breeding innovations as they're known in different geographies globally. And just to tell you a bit about how the technology is evolving and some of the uses, but also the regulatory framework that governs the use of some of this technology. And as Robert mentioned, regulations are key to delivering some of the commitments that we have to deliver a more sustainable agriculture system over the timeline that's been described. So when we consider new genomic technologies, globally, we see that the number of products created using this technology is increasing, and particularly in China, the US, and Latin America. And a good example of this is in Argentina, which is a country that has a very coherent regulatory framework for new genomic technologies. And it's encouraging local and international companies to develop products. It's interesting to note in Argentina that of 67 submissions made so far for NGTs, 43 have been made by domestic companies, suggesting that a solid regulatory framework promotes internal innovation as well as supporting grower access to the technology. So whilst many of the submissions that we see globally are still in the research phase for NGTs, this trend indicates that new products will enter the marketplace in the next 5 to 10 years, and we're already seeing some of that in the more progressive markets. Having the flexibility to place field trials using this technology is a key component of evaluating the potential value of specific characteristics that NGTs enable, as many of the changes that we see with this technology are specific to a particular growing environment or crop management practice. And it's encouraging to see that there are research groups in Europe trying to explore this within the current framework that they have to be able to deliver field trials. So there are examples of that in Belgium. The applications that we see so far cover a range of crops, so broadacre crops, but also importantly vegetables and specialties, and different applications like disease tolerance, yield, drought tolerance, and output traits. And I know that Sarah will come on to describe this in more detail. We also see development of technologies that shorten the plant breeding or product development cycle. And Robert very eloquently outlined that we only have 7 growing seasons left to make some of the commitments that we have in Europe. And this ability to shorten development cycles is critical to enable new products to come to the marketplace. So these are significant developments using NGTs, as while they don't bring new characteristics to a commercial variety, they do speed up the breeding process, which is one of the critical components of genetic gain. So genetic gain is essentially a measure that breeders use to measure the performance of their breeding program. It's essentially the yield increase that you can provide over a given time period. And by developing these technologies which shorten the breeding cycle, you're able to deliver further genetic gain or yield improvements over a given period of time. So that's an important development that we're seeing using this technology. So whilst we've seen significant advancements in the use of the technology over the past 12 months, we also see that we're able to, the the underlying technology itself has also improved. So the ability to precisely make design changes in a genotype of choice is advancing at the moment. So that's also important, because rather than working in a genotype which has particular characteristics for research, we're able to do more of this work in commercial varieties. So again, getting this closer to the marketplace, and importantly, the grower, who can see the benefits of the technology. So whilst the technology itself is evolving, the regulations around the use of the technology are also evolving. And if we consider this globally, India is one of the latest countries to develop a framework for managing new genomic technologies. And now in India, I'm pleased to say that specific categories of NGTs are exempt from GM regulations, as the Indian legislators have recognized that such changes occur naturally in plants and other organisms. This follows positive moves in some parts of Africa and further advancements in China. Now, closer to the EU, the UK has been moving ahead with its legislative framework for NGTs and its precision breeding bill. Again, the UK is enabling a system based on the likelihood of a genetic change occurring through conventional breeding or naturally. And as I'm sure those of you that are aware of some of the communication and the literature on new genomic technologies, the precise changes that this technology allows you to make in the genome is very similar or almost identical in some cases to mutations that occur naturally in all living organisms. The EU risk assessment on the technology was very positive, and its conclusions that the risk of approaches like genome editing, for example, which is one of the technologies that fall into this suite of tools in the NGT space, are similar to the risks with conventional breeding technology. So I think this is a very important assessment that was carried out by EFSA on behalf of the EU Commission. And now the industry eagerly awaits the next steps as the EU Commission prepares to present its file on NGTs to the EU Council and Parliament in June. Now, finally, from a sustainability perspective, NGTs remain a key component of our technology toolbox. If we are to continue to feed a global population that has both demands for more food, but different food types as we see more of an urban population. So this technology really supports an improved or more affluent diets in some geographies, whilst also driving yield in other geographies, as we need to deliver fewer inputs. We need to deliver more from fewer inputs with the land mass that we use for food production. So I hope that's given you an overview of some of the global developments with this technology, and also some of the ways that the regulations are changing globally, in many cases from a positive perspective, to enable developers to bring NGTs to market. I'm now going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to give you more of a view from a European perspective and how this can drive sustainability.
Thanks, Charlie. As Charlie mentioned, new genomic technologies, I'll refer to them as NGTs over the next few minutes, are a very key component to our technology toolbox if we're to sustainably increase crop yields and bring better products to market faster. But they're also really needed by our farmers to help them with maintaining their yield stability on their farms. And I want to take you and talk you through some of the benefits that we see and that we talk about as Syngenta Seeds. So firstly, NGTs can really help bring improved pest and pathogen tolerance, allowing plants to thrive with reduced pesticide use. And we know reduced pesticide use is an increasing reality in the EU. And they can do this while maintaining their yield or their output, which means lower cost on farm. It also means a reduction of food loss on farm waste, if you like, and food waste by creating longer shelf lives. Let's consider this for a moment. And there is 88 million tons of food produced each year which is lost or wasted within the EU. And this equates to roughly 140 billion euros annually. think about the impact. If we could significantly reduce this through improved pest resistance, this would have a huge impact. If you look at weather patterns over the last couple of years, we've seen an increasing recurrence of droughts, but then floods, forest fires, and Robert mentioned it in the introduction, current water availability challenges in many parts of the EU dramatically demonstrate that we need crops that can be more adaptable to climate change, and NGTs can, again, significantly help here. Improved environmental stress tolerance by providing greater yield stability, by enhancing hybrid vigor, and by vigor I mean increased biomass of the plant, targeting root architecture and the structure of crops like cereals for water use efficiency, nitrogen use efficiency, will help reduce the burden that farmers currently have on fertilizers. It will also help farmers align better with some of the regulatory guidelines that are out there with regards to nitrogen use, and ultimately save them cost. Thirdly, NGTs can help improve the nutritional composition of some crops to improve sustainability. And thinking about two examples here. The first being building healthier oil profiles in oilseed crops to replace unsustainable palm oil, or changing the oil content to be able to bring about sustainable aviation fuel and biodiesel to the market. After all, we're not going to be able to electrify everything, so this would be another sustainable alternative. Secondly, you can also look at how you improve the shelf life of vegetables to bring about less food waste. That was something, if you think about the numbers I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And thirdly, if we think about nutritional composition, you could also look at increasing protein content to be able to produce protein, high in protein crops much closer to home than we do today. One of the final benefits I wanted to talk through is around shortening the plant breeding cycle in order to bring new innovations to markets much faster. Time is one of the critical components, if not the most critical parameter of genetic gain. And genetic gain is a plant breeder's ability to deliver improvements year after year over a given time. You may ask, how does this benefit the end user and what do they care about it? But if we're able to bring higher yielding products to farmers in half the time, then you can bring about a higher output or yield on the same land. This is really sustainable farming. In my final few minutes before we take questions, I want to talk you through one final example. And I want to talk about hybrid wheat and how hybrid wheat will play a big role in sustainable cereals farming, but how NGTs could help that even more. Hybridization is a well-known technology which brings yield increase and yield stability, and we've seen it across many crops: maize, sunflower, winter oilseed rape, barley, many vegetables. And to these crops, this was a significant technology advancement. But it's more tricky. It's a more tricky development for wheat due to its complex genome. If we were trying to deliver hybrid wheat now, if we were starting the development of hybrid wheat now with NGTs, then this really would be a step change to enable us to bring the technology much faster to market with new characteristics. And I can link to three areas here. Firstly, if I think about the time that my team has spent developing hybrid wheat, we've spent around 10 years to deliver a stable production system. This time could have been reduced up to half with gene editing technology. Secondly, ensuring durable disease resistance to truly allow a reduction in the number of fungicide applications a farmer has to make whilst maintaining the yield output. And lastly, as mentioned earlier, enhancing hybrid vigor and root architecture to bring greater yield stability so his crop or her crop can withstand the different weather events that get thrown at them season after season, and have much better water and nitrogen use efficiency, particularly if they are in less nutritious soils. So to conclude on my part, in my view, the EU farm to fork strategy can promote sustainability while enhancing its competitiveness through innovation. Potential innovations include NGTs, and I believe they would and they will make a significant difference to our farmers and our industry by helping prevent costly production systems and higher food prices. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you very much indeed, Sarah. And Charlie, do come back and join us for our Q&A session. And I just wanted to come back on something, Charlie, you said very early on in your presentation when you talked about how important it was to have a solid regulatory framework. What do we mean? You gave the example of countries where the technology is not only evolving, but the regulation is evolving with it. You gave the example of India there. What do we need in Europe, in the European Union, to have a really effective approach to regulating gene-edited plants that takes into account all those unique characteristics that you were both underlining?
It's a great question, Jackie, and I think just to outline that in Syngenta we're very pro transparency on this technology, and also both the benefits, and we would like to have a clear dialogue on the risks. And I think the first thing for me from a regulatory perspective is that clear framework on science-based risk. So what is the risk of the technology itself? And I think that the EFSA assessment, the underlying technology, suggests that the risks are comparable to those that are apparent with conventional breeding. So then the next step in the regulatory framework is to understand the characteristics that the use of this technology confers on a particular variety or hybrid that a developer is bringing to the market. So a clear, again, science-based assessment, what characteristics have changed and what's the likelihood that they could pose a risk to the environment or to the consumer of that product. And I think the third thing then is just the settled regulatory landscape, so that developers know what they're aiming for, so that they can plan the work that they need to do within their development projects to meet those particular criteria. So I don't think, responsible users of this technology, they do a lot of checks. They make sure that the equivalence to conventional varieties is made, and we're clear on where the risks are. We just would like to have that science-based approach that's been taken in some geographies mirrored globally. And then, Jackie, the final thing is, we live in an environment where food chains are global. Supply is not just confined within a country or a region, and we have to be realistic about that. So actually, different countries recognizing the requirements of other countries and having a consistent data package across those countries for this technology will really help. One of my fears is that we have a very fragmented system in the future where NGTs could be regulated as GM in some geographies, and they could be completely deregulated in other geographies. And there you have a real challenge, because with the flow of commodities, it makes it more challenging to manage that. So those are just some of the things that I would like to see. And I think that, we see positive moves with the EU Commission. I hope that that's mirrored across the Parliament and member states, and that we take a realistic approach to where the risks lie with this technology.
Indeed, and the point you're making about the competitiveness, also echoing what Robert said to us in my conversation with him, and that predictability, that stability that you need. But Sarah, pointing there to, this is a very intense topic of debate right now in the European Union. It is not clear yet whether Charlie's hopes will be realised or not. I just wondered, from your perspective, you underlined that this is something farmers need as part of their toolbox.
Yep.
What do you fear the consequences will be if they're not approved for cultivation in the EU?
I mean, I think the challenges that there will then be on farmers will be even more significant than they are today. And Robert mentioned some of those. I think if EU growers are denied access to the technology, which, as I said, can really drive yield improvements and deliver crops which are more resilient to pest and environmental pressure, giving them options on how they can deliver according to sustainability targets, the sustainability targets which have already been put out there, then I think the inevitable consequence is more costly production systems, higher food prices for everybody. I mean, we do not have the benefits of GM technology in Europe, which has brought around significant production efficiencies in the kind of 20 years it's been in other regions. And I think with limited technologies and those significant sustainability targets we're looking at, it will be very challenging for EU producers to be competitive and to then also be preferred in the global supply chain that Charlie just mentioned, because they will not be able to achieve the higher crop yields that we are requiring in order to feed a growing population, but to also reduce our activities in other areas.
Let me pop in a couple of questions from our audience. Dominique Hebert, talking about areas you might be focusing on, points to epigenetics as something that can bring us solutions to adapt plants, and also new crops that need less water like sorghum. Can you say anything about developments in those areas? Who wants to pick up on that? Charlie?
Well, maybe I'll take a first stab at this, and it's a great question. So for those in the audience that are not familiar with the term epigenetic, that's a change that's not coded in the plant's genome. There are other factors which influence the expression of particular genes, either the way that the DNA itself is folded or can be accessible to be transcribed into proteins that then bring characteristics into the plant itself. Now, epigenetic changes are influenced by stress in the environment, chemical treatments, or some of the factors which control DNA folding specifically. It's an area that's had increasing prominence in research over the last 15 to 20 years. And we know that epigenetic changes can be associated with particular characteristics. One of the challenges at the moment is that epigenetic changes can be unpredictable, and they're not necessarily heritable, so they're not translated into the next generation in a predictable manner. Now, as we understand more about the way that epigenetics work, I think there is a lot of potential there that we could use that as an additional way to harness both the variation that we see in DNA sequence in plants, but also this other component that controls expression of genes on the top. I don't think we're there at the moment, but by growing plants in particular stress environments, you can see in some cases that they tolerate stress in a subsequent generation. Now, if we understand the mechanism of action of that, we will be able to use that in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. And a quick one to you, Sarah, about risks. I won't read out the whole question because it's quite long, from Matt Shardlow, but talking about assessing new risks. How do you assess the risk? He's asking, is it not the case that biological manipulation of the environment has higher environmental risks than non-biological methods? How do we assess these risks? What do you think is the most effective approach going forward? Sarah,
well, I think when we think about risk and we think about NGTs, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, no problem.
Hopefully you can hear me. Okay.
Yeah.
I was saying, when we think about NGTs versus some of the other pieces, then I think we also have to think about the precision that we put in within NGTs, and that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at how do you speed up precise changes versus looking at wider changes that do happen naturally in the environment. And I think it is a risk-based conversation, and that's where, as Charlie mentioned, we really want to look at the risk from a science point of view, and we want to look at then the impact that it has on elsewhere and other parts of the genome to make sure they are not affected, and we can still deliver areas that will target the needs that we talk about, environmental and social.
Thank you. Very quick last question to you both. If you had to identify a key priority, the key next step, if we are to realise all the potential of the innovations in seeds you've been talking about, in 10, 20 seconds, what would it be? Charlie, what's your key next step?
I mean, for me, it's having this coherent regulatory framework, because I think we're there with the technology, we're ready to go. We want the confidence that we have a route to market, because we're investing in this area. We want others to buy into it and invest in it too for the future.
Thank you. Sarah?
And for me, it's taking the regulatory framework, the technology we have, it's converging it with digital tools to get there even faster and even more with even more precision.
Thank you. I think we're going to hear more about that when we talk about regenerative agriculture later on. Thank you to you both very much indeed. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We need to move on because we're now going to turn our attention to biologicals and the role that they can play in helping to meet the challenges in a changing world and driving sustainability. Before I introduce our speakers in this session, we're going to show you a short video to provide some context for the discussion that will follow. So let's watch that video.
Biologicals are agricultural technologies that harness nature to protect and improve the health of food crops facing the stresses of today's rapidly changing world. The two main types are biostimulants, which enhance and strengthen crops, and biocontrols. They control pests and diseases. Take the humble potato. It feeds more than 1 billion people across the world. But potatoes aren't built for our increasingly frequent heat waves and irregular water availability. A biostimulant like Qantas from Syngenta helps potatoes by enhancing their tolerance of heat and water deficiency. Heat-relieving nutrients and amino acids give the stressed potatoes leaves a much-needed boost to continue photosynthesis, sending proteins to the potato. The result? The plant remains greener for longer, giving it a better chance to reach its full nutritious potential. Adapting food production to be more resilient to climate change is one of the most urgent challenges of our time. Meeting the challenge will require a huge effort, and agricultural biologicals will be on the forefront of this shift. By innovating boldly, we can transform the future of food security for us all.
So, that is what we're talking about. To hear more about this, I'm delighted to welcome Riccardo Vanelli, who is Head of Biologicals for Europe, Africa and Middle East at Syngenta. Very warm welcome to you, Riccardo. And Alberto Biagesi, Global Head of Biostimulant Research at Syngenta. Very warm welcome to you both. Questions from all of you later on, but I'm going to hand over to Riccardo and Alberto to talk to each other and tell us a little bit more about biologicals. Over to you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Today, myself and Riccardo will try to explain and describe the innovation that stay behind our biological solution. So, for these reasons, I leave the floor to Riccardo, asking to him to describe, to tell us more about the biological at the forefront of innovation. Please, Riccardo, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alberto, and good afternoon to everyone. Indeed, we'll talk about biological this afternoon, and specifically how biologicals can put together productivity and sustainability in line with the regenerative agriculture concept. But first of all, so let's have a look to what are the challenges where biological will play more and more a key role in the future of agriculture. First of all, production. Food production is definitely a challenge because it must increase by 50% from now to 2050 to feed our growing population, which is expected to reach 1 billion in 2050. So a clear challenge. The second challenge is related to the climate change. And in this case, we all know, we mentioned about that before, so temperatures are rising in a way, and key resources like, for example, water are becoming increasingly limited. Probably not everybody knows that 70% of the fresh world water consumption is coming from agriculture. So it's evident that if there is a climate change, there are implications in the water cycle that can have implications also in terms of farming productivity. So water has also another important impact on another key precious commodity we have, the soil. And also another key note is the fact that just in a teaspoon of soil, we could have billions of microorganisms. And if, of course, we don't have water, we don't have moisture, and as a consequence of that, so biodiversity cannot flourish accordingly. The third priority and the third challenge that we have ahead of us is related to the consumer behaviors. And in particular, consumers are becoming not only interested to the food that they are eating, but more importantly, also on how the food is produced and how sustainably the food is produced. And this is in particular valid for the new generation. So as a consequence of that, there is more and more clarity on the fact that we need to change how we produce the food. How we produce food needs to evolve. And to do that, we need to provide to growers modern tools that can really help them to maximize food production, but also cut emission at the same time and help to regenerate nature. I think that meeting this challenge requires really a collective effort, and clearly biological, we see today, is really at the forefront of this shift that we need to make. And the innovation in biological can really be a really great contributor to the transformation for the food security tomorrow. But let's have a look what are biologicals indeed and how they can make the difference. So as you can see, as you've seen probably on the video before, biologicals are agricultural technologies that harness nature to protect the crops, but also to enhance the health of the crop themselves, to cope with the challenging environment in which they are living today and they will live tomorrow. In particular, there are different categories of biologicals. The first one is related to biocontrols, and we are talking about say solutions that control pests and diseases. These are naturally occurring material that helps to manage and control, for example, diseases, but also insect pests, weeds, nematode. And also they help to reduce the level of residues that we may find in food as well on our tables. Second is related to biostimulants, and we are talking about a solution that helps to enhance and also strengthen the crop against, for example, abiotic stresses. So we are talking about product that stimulates the natural processes of plant to have a better tolerance, for example, to extreme heat, or to have a better nutrient use efficiency, and to increase the quality of the crop. A fourth category is represented by biofertilizers, and biofertilizers are microbial-based products that help to have higher nutrients availability and uptake to the plant, like, for example, the nitrogen fixation in the soil for a better crop result. But we really believe that biologicals can really make a difference if they are combined also with the other novelties and other technologies that we can provide to growers, such as modern, for example, crop protection product coming from chemistry, but also as we have seen from the colleagues before, so high-tech seeds coming from new breeding technique. And finally, what we'll see after that, also digital agriculture will really help to apply the products at the right time, in the right quantities, in the right place. So we as Syngenta, we are really committed to make sure that the growers can have access to all these technologies to cope with the challenges that I've just mentioned before. But now, Alberto, back to you now. So tell us more about the concept of connecting science with nature. What does it mean in biologicals?
Thank you, Riccardo. Yes, I will try to explain how we try to make the difference in the biological sector, offering those solutions that you already described very well. And particularly Rob, at the beginning of the webinar, described that the very important consequence of climate change. For these reasons, we try to offer solutions that can mitigate these consequences regarding the abiotic stress, but also offering solution to our grower, bring science-based innovation, and offering to them solution that can improve quality parameter of crop or improve availability of nutrient. But we are doing all that, apply the technology platform that stay behind all our biostimulant, that is calling the gap power technology. And this gap power technology is based on four main pillars, where the first one is represented by the deep knowledge of active ingredient, raw material that we have, and that permitted to us to characterize and preserve the specific active ingredient that can have a physiological response in the target plant. The second platform, the second pillar of the gap power is represented by our proprietary extraction process that can permit to us to customize the extraction and enrich with specific technical concentrate all those ingredients that can be responsible for the functionality of our product. The third pillar, the gap power, is represented by the advanced screen investigation technology. In other way, all the omic science that permitted to us to better comprehend the physiological rule of the ingredient that we have inside our biostimulant, our prototype, through the transcriptomic or phenomics science that can permit to us to investigate after the application of our extract or prototype in which way gene can be up or down regulated and consequently transcribed for a specific protein. But at the same time, using phenomics, we can, as I like to say, connecting the dot. So this means to check if those genes that seems up to regulated have really codified for protein capable to influence the phenotyping. So in other way, using all these technology together, we can predict the functionality of our solution, but at the same time improve our knowledge regarding the mode of action of our product. Last but not least is represented by the pillar regarding the open field trial that we are doing worldwide. Very useful for us to really adjust and comprehend that, taking account the natural variability that we have worldwide, the correct rate, dosage, and timing of application of our biostimulant or biological solution to give right suggestion to our grower. But this is useful also to our database on all the evidence that can permit to us to support our solution with good evidence regarding the return of investment that our solution can offer to our customer, to the grower. So in this sense, our innovation is paired with agronomic support on the field through our BioSquad team, a team of agronomists that worldwide are taking care of the right and correct use of our product, suggesting the right way and the right positioning of the product to emphasize the performance that our solution can offer to the grower. For sure, we are not doing all those things alone, and for this reason, we seek to be collaborator of choice, partnering with the best in the industry, the university, research center, startup, with the aim to improve and sustain much more as possible in the future our biological solution. So, but now it's time, Riccardo, for you to explain how our biological solution can represent the future for us, but also for our grower. Please.
Thanks, Alberto. And really, from your words, I can see true innovation starting from the lab and really arriving through the BioSquad agronomy support to the growers. So thanks a lot. And really, coming back to your question, so what are the key next steps? So for us in biological, first of all, Syngenta Biological is really fully committed in order to continue to invest and provide innovation to farmers in order to face the challenges I mentioned before, in order to promote the regenerative agriculture concept also through biologicals. But in order to do that, we really think that if we want to unleash the full potential of biologicals, we need to have a supporting ecosystem, and in particular, an ecosystem in terms of policies and regulatory framework that can really help us in order to have a faster and more solid adoption of these new technologies, in particular in Europe, but all over the world. And specifically to EU, we think that the biologicals can really provide an important contribution to the Green Deal and Farm to Fork strategy implementation, which is ahead of us by the 2030, with solutions that are exactly in line with the EU target defined by the Commission. And finally, we are really fully convinced that only through collaborations across the different actors in the value chain, this can really happen. So starting from the input industries, going through the food value chain partners, the NGOs, the growers, and of course the regulators that can help to facilitate and speed up the introduction of biological solutions, we can really make the difference. So let's work together, let's make it happen, and let's make it happen soon, because I mean, the challenges of agriculture is now, and we need to provide solutions for that.
Thank you very much. I want to come back on that issue of the ecosystem, the framework that you talked about in a moment. But first, in terms of the challenges that you face to really unleash that potential, what do you both see briefly as the key challenges ahead? Alberto, what are the most important challenges from your perspective?
Yeah, from my perspective, from technical point of view, the most important challenger consists in being able, from my point of view, to improve the performance of the biologicals, and in particular for biostimulant, being able to manage much more the natural complexity that characterizes them. This is certainly a challenger, but at the same time also a great opportunity to fully realize their potential, from my point of view.
And for you, Alberto, Ricardo, how do you see it in terms of the challenge for you as an industry?
But I think it's very much related to the regulatory framework I was mentioning before. So we really need to make sure that we introduce a simplified biocontrols regulatory system, as was anticipated before also by Romer Renwick. This can really make the difference for introducing the innovation. Also, incentivization to the private sector as to the grower, to the user, to the employment of this kind of products can really make the difference in terms of making them spread all in all. And last but not least, I think it's a matter of joint and open collaboration between the public sector and also, the private sector together if we want to really to speed up these new technologies that needs to be introduced as soon as possible.
I want to come back on that issue of collaboration because I think it's going to be a cross-cutting theme in all our discussions this afternoon in our panel at the end. And I know Ricardo is going to come back for that. So you've described that ecosystem. You've described the sort of things you want. The consequences if we don't get that right is something that, we've heard about different parts of the world, competitiveness issues and so on. Alberto, how important is it for Europe to make sure it gets it right within that global context?
Yeah, for sure. To don't move in this direction, we will slow down what you have called at the beginning the acceleration innovation. That is fundamental things for us to speed up as much as possible the innovation in our sector. For these reasons, I'm really convinced that will be very important for us to continue to investing in R&D, to be able also to attract the new talent capable to carry on the challenger that we taken about early. So this is very important because we need to think, we are speaking of the future of the biological sector. And for the future, we are needed the younger, the people on that.
Yeah, we are almost out of time in this session, but just by way of closing, I'm asking all our panels the same question of all the issues we've talked about. And obviously, for you, Ricardo, it is that regulatory framework. But within that, the key next step, the most important thing we need to do first, from a regulatory perspective or a broader perspective. Same question to you both. Very brief answers, if you would.
Yeah, I can start. I think we need to make clear, this challenge which is ahead of us, and also the sense of urgency should be around because 2030 is really behind the corner, to tell the truth, talking about innovation. And so we need to make sure that we put something really on the table in terms of discussion of changing, the policy and the regulatory frameworks that will really help us in order to introduce innovation. If we don't do that, the risk of having, this import-export kind of balance that you were mentioning before, in terms of market access can really be scary for the future of EU. So the sooner the better, and we can find solution together, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Alberto, your key next step.
Yeah, I repeat what I said before. Investing in the research is a fundamental thing to doing things and to attract a new talent. Because for sure we need to be focused on those that are the unmet need of the grower and be capable to offer soon solution for them.
Thank you very much. And as I said earlier, I would like to come back on that issue of partnership and collaboration in our closing session. We look forward to seeing you later for that, Ricardo, and Sarah will also be rejoining us. Alberto, thank you so much for being with us for today. Fascinating stuff. So we're now going to move on to our third area of focus, and that is regenerative agriculture. We're going to talk about the role of what is known as regenerative agriculture in supporting sustainability and hear a little bit more and discuss this with farmers. What do they need? How are they using it? I'm first delighted to welcome Mark Hall, who is Head of Sustainable Farming for Europe, Africa and the Middle East at Syngenta and also runs his own family farm. So speaking to us with both hats on. It's very good to have you with us, Mark. Mark is going to give us a little presentation about regenerative agriculture and some of the work being done in this area. Then we're going to have a conversation with another farmer, and then we will open up for discussion. But Mark, over to you to kick us off.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you very much. So, what is regenerative agriculture? There are a number of definitions across the industry and across the value chain as well of regenerative agriculture. It's being very much supported by the value chain as a farming system. And in fact, considering all of the other presentations that we've heard earlier from Charlie, Sarah, from Alberto, Ricardo, it's a way of combining all of the fantastic technologies that we've heard about in a outcome-based farming system that really helps us to rejuvenate and restore soil health, to protect our climate, to lock up carbon within that soil, and to help protect our climate, and to protect our water resources by optimizing water use and water storage within the soil. And by doing so, actually delivering an enhanced level of productivity and profitability. But there are some key principles, and this is our definition of regenerative agriculture, which aligns well with the Gabe Brown definition, the sort of godfather of the term regenerative agriculture, from his farm in North Dakota in the US, and applied on my farm. We're trying to absolutely minimize soil disturbance. We're adopting a no-till system, or where we've got slight compaction issues, we have a very much reduced till system using some new machinery technology that enables us to do that and to establish good crops in the process. It requires us to have plants in the ground all year round. So living roots help work and interact with the soil microbiology and with the physical and chemical properties of the soil and enhance those. So when we have periods without cash crops, we use cover crops in order to make sure there are living roots in the soil all the time. And also having a diversification of those crops, not a single crop approach necessarily, but having a diversified rotation across a number of crops, and maybe even using intercropping options if possible to enable that diversity. We use precision application of biologicals and chemical inputs. That means using new technology, really data-enabled precision placement of seeds, of our crop protection products, and of crop nutrition products as well. And modern technology that I'm using on my farm is allowing me to tailor and optimize the inputs that we are using to get a really productive crop. The last one is difficult to achieve on all farms. It's about integrating livestock where possible. That may not be possible necessarily on all farms across Europe, but actually, for example, I don't integrate livestock, but I do use some organic compost from a local municipal source, and I can use farmyard manure from local farmers in order to bring organic matter back to the soil and to speed up some of the processes, the positive processes, the natural processes I'm looking for in the soil. Next slide, please. So there are a few challenges with regenerative agriculture, and as a farmer, I want to give you a bit of insight to some of those challenges and how we can help with them. Firstly, whilst we've got great anecdotal evidence about positive aspects of soil health from regenerative agriculture, we need more scientific evidence. We need to be able to unlock the secrets of what goes on in our soil from a physical, chemical, and biological interaction perspective. We are some way there, but we could do with more scientific evidence to help support growers in taking the plunge in moving to a regenerative system. We need more sources of advice for growers. It is quite difficult to get good advice without that scientific evidence. And we need to help growers through a transition period. Depending on soil type, it is really a 3 to 5 year, maybe even a longer period, depending on your cropping program, for transitioning to a regenerative ag system. And so risk management advice and support along there can help really boost grower confidence and understanding of what to do and what not to do in certain situations when you are not tilling the soil. One of the most difficult parts, I think, and this is being supported now in some countries in Europe, is the adoption of the technology. Now, this is my tractor and my no-till drill. There is €250,000 euros of equipment sat here. It is, expensive to transition. Then you need a certain number of hectares in order to justify such equipment. We need lower cost routes of adopting this technology, and we need some incentives in order to help that. The overall cost of setting this up, though, is not necessarily as high as having to buy all of the tillage equipment that farmers tend to possess. So the overall cost of operations per hectare on an ongoing basis is actually much lower. So there is an investment proposal, and there is potentially some support to help adopt the sort of technologies we need. And this is also all GPS linked, isobus linked, variable rate enabled, and that really helps us to harness the technologies that the other speakers have spoken about by accurately placing them in the soil in a variable manner according to the soil differences. And that leads me to the next slide. So we really want to help to understand what those soil differences are. Next slide, please. To do that, we have introduced a new service which starts to unlock the secrets behind the variability in soils, both from a physical and chemical perspective. So InterraScan is our new service that we are launching across Europe over the next year. We're now operating in 5 countries across Europe, and we're giving growers the ability to, without interrupting or penetrating the soil, to give an analysis and a visualization of the variability in their soils, both from a macronutrient, a soil texture, a micronutrient, and other relevant properties that allow them to generate variable rate maps to place seed, to place fertilizer, and other inputs, and optimize the use of those according to those variables in soil conditions. So this is a new service, and we've got another pipeline of other services that will help us to further unlock some of the secrets of what's going on in the soil and help growers to further optimize their productivity and profitability and their sustainability, of course. Next slide, please. And that's not all we're doing. So that's InterraScan as an example. InterraScan runs on a data platform, and we're looking at interacting and adjoining that and making it an integral part of our CropWise suite of digital ag tools, which enable many aspects of farm management to be digitized and to build a data platform for growers to call on, to analyze, and for us to be able to help them to really optimize production and productivity and profitability. So CropWise is developing as our digital offer to the market, and CropWise Sustainability will be one of the examples of the CropWise suite of products, which will help growers to understand what they might be able to do to gradually adopt a regenerative system and tailor their approaches to be more sustainable according to their metrics and the priorities that they set to be more sustainable. We also want to be able to build grower confidence and show that that regenerative ag works for growers. And our network of Interra farms will gradually start to identify this as we help to demonstrate some of the technologies that are being talked about. So that's it from me as an introduction to regenerative ag, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Mark. And Mark will be back with us for a brief Q&A session in a little while. But thank you very much for now, Mark. And we're going to hear in a moment from another farmer. But before I introduce him, let's watch a short video about his family farm, the challenges he faces and how he's meeting them.
Der Betrieb ist in Brandenburg und heute reden wir über 1800 Hektar eigenen Flächen, also die wir selbst bewirtschaften. Und des Weiteren haben wir noch ein Lohnunternehmen mit im Prinzip dem gleichen Flächenumfang. Grundsätzlich haben wir recht schwache Böden hier, so sandige Böden. Da haben wir natürlich ein Wasserhalteproblem, das ist eigentlich unser größtes Problem und da müssen wir was gegen tun. Und wollen jetzt mit der Strip-Till-Geschichte und der dauerhaften Begrünung das nächste erreichen, dass noch mehr Wasser im Boden gehalten wird. Der Boden muss gesund sein und dann habe ich auch eine gesunde Pflanze. Das schließt für mich nicht aus, dass ich natürlich auch chemischen Pflanzenschutz einsetze, dass ich auch Technik einsetze, sondern das gehört für mich dazu. Man muss sehen, was hat es für Auswirkungen auf den Boden. Das muss das Ziel sein. Es gibt nicht nur das gute Bio und das böse Konventionelle, sondern es gibt genauso ganz schlechtes Bio und wirklich gutes Konventionelles. Unsere Familie lässt sich zurückverfolgen bis ungefähr ins Anfang 18. Jahrhundert. Der Betrieb selber ist vor knapp 1100 Jahren das erste Mal urkundlich erwähnt worden. Das heißt, er ist rund 1100 Jahre alt. Unser jüngerer Sohn, der hat seine Liebe zur Landwirtschaft entdeckt, auch richtig, mit viel Elan. Und der wird den Betrieb hier weiterführen. Wir haben im Laufe der letzten 50, 80 Jahre eine veränderte Landwirtschaft erlebt. Und ich glaube, die Quintessenz aus beiden, wie es ganz früher mal war und wie man auch mit heute eine Landwirtschaft macht, das wird ein guter Weg sein, wie wir auch in Zukunft eine Landwirtschaft machen können. Wir haben in unserem Betrieb alles digitalisiert, jede Fahrspur, jede Fahrgasse ist digitalisiert worden. Wir machen eine differenzierte Aussaat mit Hilfe von Satelliten und Ertragsdaten der letzten Jahre. Aber wir müssen wieder mehr auch den Boden in den Fokus nehmen.
So, Hans-Heinrich Grünhagen, a German farmer you saw in the video, he's now going to join us live. It is great to have you with us, and also joining us, Eva Hansel, Head of Sustainable Portfolio Development, Europe, Africa and Middle East in Syngenta Crop Protection Research and Development Department. Very warm welcome also to you, Eva. And Eva, I'm going to leave you to have a little chat with Hans-Heinrich, and then, as I say, I hope we will have time at the end for some questions from our audience. Over to you, Eva.
Thank you very much, Jackie. So we have heard a lot about innovation, Hans-Heinrich, but finally it is the farmer who applies innovation. So at Syngenta, our guiding principle therefore is that innovation must work for the farmer, first of all. Yeah, we're building close relationship with farmers, and I'm very happy and grateful to have you here with us today, Hans-Heinrich, as one of our partnering farmers. So thank you very much for joining us here, and let's deep dive a bit in your operations and your experiences. In the video, we heard about your farm as it runs today. But what has changed more concrete in, let's say, the last 3 years?
First, my thinking has changed. Before, I was always thought of the plant. I looked what can I do good things for the plant with fertilizer, with chemicals, or what else. I hadn't paid too much attention to the soil. At some point, I realized that I don't have to feed the plant, but I have to feed my soil, and my soil feeds my plants. So today I think keeping my soil healthy and improving it, that's the most important thing. Automatically, I came to the conclusion that the plow and the cultivator is not longer the right tool for me. My goal is to disturb the soil as little as possible, like Mark just mentioned. My tools are digitalization and a strip-till, both of which are still quite unknown in Germany in this intensity in which we operate. So no one knows, or nearly no one knows something about strip-till. And digitalization is, everyone tries a little bit, but I guess we already did a lot of that. And the permanent greening of the fields is also part of this. That's really the same like Mark just mentioned.
And what were the challenges that you have faced when changing the operations?
I have 3 points, I guess. The first thing is we have in Germany no machinery or other necessary tools available. The industry don't build any machinery for regenerative agriculture. So we bought our machinery in England. Maybe we can buy it in Poland or somewhere else, but not in Germany. Next point is there's hardly no experience in Germany. We need to find out everything by our own, and there's no political support. ForumforAg is nearly unknown, I already said. And third thing, we need to educate our employees and all the other involved persons by our own. There's no one who shows the people how to do that.
Yeah, okay. I understand that the availability of the right tools is an issue, as well as education, and also you mentioned mindset. So in this context, how do you see the current debates in the public, but also in politics?
Many of these debates are not mine. I think agriculture could be much further along if politics and society would free themselves from the ideological blinkers. For me, there's no black and white thinking. I take the best from both organic farming and conventional farming. That's what we do in our farm too. We have an organic farm and so we have a conventional farm. So we can find out what's the best thing for the whole farm. And regionality and keeping the soil healthy is much more important to me. Soil is my true capital. I found that out in the last years.
Yeah. So what should, in your eyes, then the debate be about? What should be discussed?
The debate should be about speeding up innovations, scaling good practices, and support farmers to practically apply locally. No farm is like another farm. My farm is totally different from my neighbor's farm. So every farm changes over the time. My motto has always been rethink your farm every 10 years. So you have to look to your farm and say, okay, what can I change now? And agriculture is diverse, and the debate should be on how the best support is this diversity of nature and the profitability of the farms. That's the most important thing, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So rather than doing black and white stereotype thinking, you're looking for support which really appreciates that diversity. Can you give us an example, maybe concrete? What are the topics you would like to get more support on?
We want to get to know our soil better and learn how to improve it. For this, we need tools and parameters so that we can react quickly and to unwished developments. We need research that supports us in this and is not ideological driven. We need a policy that also allows for change. Society and politics must take into account the demand of climate change, which we already been able to feel and measure for many years through change growth periods and change precipitation. For that, we build artificial irrigation and something like that. Everything changed. Is it not enough to just talk about agriculture and have some strange ideas? Every farm is different, and every farmer knows best how to work with the soil. Just give us the freedom to do so. That's my biggest wish for everything we do. We want to do our own thing.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe a last question, if I may, Jackie. How do you see Syngenta supporting you with your needs?
First, let me say I'm very pleased that this issue is getting so much attention by Syngenta. I never thought about that, so it's really a good thing. For example, I am participating in a Syngenta project called Nature Positive Agriculture, which brings the players together. We, the growers, conventional and organic, share experience and learn from each other on various topics such as reduced tillage practices, agroforestry, carbon farming, biostimulants, and so on. This is very helpful and helps us to test new things because we can hear from other farms what they did there. Scientists are studying insects on our fields and other parameters, so we can learn how what works and what doesn't. Syngenta supports us to test new things, and Syngenta provides the opportunity to communicate about our farms and the good things we are doing there. That's what we need. We need communication.
Thank you very much, both to you, Hans-Heinrich, and to Eva. And if you have any questions, Hans-Heinrich will be staying for our last panel as well, so do get them coming in on the chat. Let me bring Mark back into our conversation as well now. And Mark, you all talked, and Hans-Heinrich talked very eloquently about some of the challenges that he faced, and you underlined some of them as well. In terms of encouraging farmers to adopt these practices, and we've heard about some of the support being given to meet them, but what do you think, same question first to Mark and then to Hans-Heinrich, what do you think needs to be done to encourage more farmers, to convince them of the benefits of going down this road and then enabling them to do so? Mark first.
Well, my experience on my farm and from my friends that are farmers is that when you see someone making a success of it on a similar soil type or in the locality and climate conditions that you deal with, then you start to get some faith that you can adopt this too. And for me, it is about making that experience real and bringing advice and science and fact to growers to help convince them that this is the right move, the right investment move for them to adopt the technology and move to this system.
So as you say, moving from that anecdotal feel-good factor to concrete evidence that convinced them. Hans-Heinrich, for you and from your own experience, it doesn't sound like you have needed much encouragement. You've been very much leading on this. But for other farmers who are less convinced, what is the key, do you think, to bringing them on board?
Education. Really easy. It's education. The people have to learn about the possibilities, what we can do with Region Ag. No one knows. No farmers knows what to do, and the politicians, and they even also don't know what to do and what it is. We need. They need to know what Region Ag means for them. And Region Ag is the solution of many problems we have today, I guess. And how can we do that? We can do that with demonstration farms and with a lot of information. I guess that's the most important thing in the moment.
Thank you. And Eva, what for you? You too talked about mindset and education. You also asked Hans-Heinrich about the support that he gets from Syngenta, but also what support he needs. What for you is the key if we are to really move forward and get more farmers to follow Hans-Heinrich's example?
Yeah, I think we have two very brave farmers with us today here. Which are not necessarily the average. Talking to many farmers, what I experience is that they simply don't have the trust that they get the necessary support, and they do have access to a well-filled and constantly innovated toolbox, which enables them to deal with eventual new challenges they will face. And this is a prerequisite for them to change and to do that, to dare that transition.
So going back to those conversations we had about seeds and about biologicals, making sure that they have access to those tools, all the tools that can help them. For each of you, Hans-Heinrich, and then I'll finish with Mark, key next step. Where do we know? Hans-Heinrich, you mentioned many issues, many challenges you faced, and many areas where you feel you could get more support. What for you is the key next step?
The key next step, I guess we have to find multipliers. This must be innovative farms that are well networked and who also will want to share their results. I do this, I have reports in trade journals, something like that, and I tell a lot of people what we're doing there. So the people have to learn what we do. And special, I think we have to talk with contractors. They have the money to pay the very expensive machinery and to buy this machinery and to try in different farms and to show the farmers what they can do there with this strip-till machinery, for example.
Thank you, which brings us back to a key point you made, Mark, in your presentation about the cost of this equipment. For you, the key next step, briefly, if you would.
Tell the story, show the story, and build the science. I think we have a network of 9 Interra demonstration farms across Europe. I'd like to build that out more for Syngenta and help us to demonstrate some of the excellent work that Hans-Heinrich is demonstrating in his area, for example, and help to get other people familiar and get some other unusual vanguards like Hein-Henrik and myself to keep going and prove to their farmers in their localities that this can work for them.
Thank you very much. And thank you to you all for a great session, a fascinating session, and for providing inspiration for other farmers, as Eva said, to leaders in the field, if you will forgive the pun. We are very grateful. Thank you to you, Eva, for joining us. Mark and Hans-Heinrich, please do stay with me for our final session today, where we are going to try and pull all of this together and chart the way forward. Rejoining us, Sarah Iveson, who is Head of Field Crop Seeds Development for Europe, Africa, Middle East for Syngenta, and Riccardo Vanelli, Head of Biologicals for the same reason as Syngenta. Very warm welcome back to both of you. So I want to come back really to where we started and the title of this session. And the title was Accelerating Innovation. What for you, across the whole spectrum of issues we've discussed this afternoon, and perhaps I'll come to you this time, Sarah, first. What for you is the key overall to moving forward at the scale? And we talked about scale. I talked about this with Robert at the beginning, the scale and the speed that we really need if we're going to meet these challenges. In essence, where do we go from here?
Yeah, great question. And I don't think there is going to be a silver bullet, if you like, that's going to help us solve. I think there is going to be a convergence of technologies. I think it's going to be from innovation in plant breeding and the seed industry as a whole. For me, it's going to be driven by digital applications in the next 10 to 20 years. I think for me, if I see it, the power of genome sequencing in conjunction with data analytics and deep learning or artificial intelligence will enable us to really evolve existing variation and be able to meet yield and sustainability targets. So I really see it as from a seeds innovation side coupled with digital. I think the two together will...
And do keep those questions coming in if you have any from our audience. Riccardo, for you, the key to moving forward at scale and at speed.
But for me, based on also what we have heard today, is a matter of accelerating the integration of the different innovative technologies that we learn about today. This is modern agriculture in a way, and for this we need to accelerate investment in a way, and also we need to support growers to make sure that they can have fully access to this technology. Again, crop protection, biological, seeds, digital ag, but we need to have an ecosystem which is favorable. So we are not able to introduce these technologies. We can't provide our support to growers to face challenges. So that's what we need to accelerate.
And let me just bring in, if I could, before I come to Mark and Hans Heinrich on that, a question that was actually asked much earlier, but was a broader question, so I saved it, from Jasmine J in our audience, who says, points to the contrast with how pharmaceuticals responded to COVID with vaccines that significantly crunch the innovative and regulatory cycles. And Jasmine says, if we agree we have a climate emergency, why are we still using the same yardstick of 10 years for new innovative products? She's talking about Europe, or as she says, even 2 to 3 years in the US. I mean, are there parallels? Are there things we can learn from other areas about how to get that environment right, Ricardo? How to get that ecosystem you keep talking about right?
Absolutely, yes. I think this is a great analogy in a way. So COVID provided the urgency of being faster, the introduction of innovation. And that's the same story that we need to face now, also in agriculture. Probably the level of evidence, the level of awareness of that is not so much importantly spread. So that's why it's important to have this dialogue that we are having today to make it more evident. For sure, there are tools like emergency registration that we can use in some cases for crop protection and for biological, but this is not just enough. We need to have a more stable process for introducing technology in order to avoid to be in a urgency and to be more stable in introducing innovation for the future challenges.
Mark, Hans Heinrich, I don't know whether you want to add anything here. I want to come on in a moment to the question of collaboration and partnership, but did you want to add anything, Mark, in terms of that acceleration that we're talking about? Mark?
No, I think, look, I think Sarah's called this out. This is just as relevant for all of the technologies, really. This digital enablement and the way that we bring the scientific facts, the data, the new technologies, the new products, the new services all together and deliver this will be the secret to whether we can really scale it or not. It has to be simple, easy, usable, and reliable, and for growers to adopt it at scale. And we see that time and time again. So for me, that acceleration has to be a digitally enabled, but very well digitally enabled a journey.
Thank you very much. And Hans Heinrich, please do add to that if you want to. But I wanted to come on with you to the question of collaboration, to the question of partnership, because it's been mentioned in all of our sessions that working together and how important it is. How do you see the role of all the different players who need to be involved in supporting you, whether we're talking industry, the political, the policymaker, academia, researchers? How do you see all their different roles to really make sure that you can take advantage of this innovation?
Things have to be easy for the farmers. They have a lot to do, just like Mark mentioned, but things have to be easy and they have to build so farmers can use it. We don't have, we have problems with very high, we have problems with things we cannot understand. It's a lot of computerized and something like that. A lot of farmers have problems with that.
Very specialized knowledge is required. Yes.
Yes, that's the thing. I look for that word. It has to be easy for most of the farmers. It has to be easy, so they can understand it and they can use it. They have a lot of things to think about, and then they have to change their work on the fields. That's a wholly new thing for the farmers, and it has to be easy so they can do that beside all the other things they have to do. And the next thing is they have to make money with that. We have to get a price for that we can change. Farmers have only small money, and it needs a lot of money to change your farm. it takes about 5 years, maybe longer, and you need money for that. I guess
And
that's
Ricardo,
really important.
you talked, and Alberto talked a lot about the importance of collaboration. Collaboration with whom, and how do we make it work? Who needs to do what to make that deliver?
To my
Question to me, yeah?
perspective,
To Ricardo, please.
to my perspective is really, I really see a three-way approach. So industry need to invest. That's a matter of fact. So we need to create a solution through investment. I think we need to collaborate with growers, with food chain, and also with academia for co-developing solutions based on the needs that the grower have. Also with food value chain needs as well, that is coming from the last part of the value chain, clearly. And third, we need to collaborate with regulators. This is the third key element in order to create this favorable ecosystem, not just for biologicals, but I would say for innovation in general in agriculture. So if we are able to combine all three, we can be successful to meet the challenge that we mentioned at the beginning of our session.
Thank you. Sarah, from your perspective, who do we need to work with, and how do we make that collaboration really effective? How do you do it in practice?
Yeah, I think I want to pick up two of the ones that Ricardo mentioned. The first is the regulators, and coming back to the question from Jasmine, I think it was, is how do we speed this up, and why was COVID slightly different? I mean, I think COVID, they had a science-based risk discussion with the regulators to be able to get some of the vaccines through with the urgency needed, with COVID taking over as a pandemic. If we can have a similar science-based, risk-based discussion with the regulators on some of the innovations that we've talked about today, to say how do we get those through the regulatory process faster, we can then speed up the innovation and we can reduce the timing. And I think collaboration with external parties, so universities, institutes, from an R&D perspective, we will never be able to do everything ourselves, and nor do we claim that we want to or can do. And I think collaboration with those that have expertise, those that are also interested in these areas around providing solutions for farmers. We want to be able to work with them on solutions together for our growers.
Thank you. Mark, a thought on this? Effective collaboration, how does it work?
Yeah, I think one of the areas for me that we have to still unlock is the collaboration between science and technology companies and the agronomic decision-making companies like ourselves and the machinery manufacturers. This is an interaction point for technology, and actually we will simplify this a great deal for growers when we can really enable our technologies to be used and our data to be used through machinery in the easiest way possible. There is some way to go for making variable rate technology, for making optical spot spray technology really scalable. And in actual fact, I was meeting with John Deere last night to discuss some of this with them. So I think one of the biggest collaborations we need to get right to make it really good for growers is that collaboration between machinery and us as agronomic science providers.
Thank you, Mark. And can I put you one question from our audience, from Mark Richards, who says Spain and Italy are having a very tough year with drought affecting yields and maybe affecting the feasibility of certain crops that are grown in certain regions of the country. How can our digital technologies, we haven't focused so much on precision agriculture, how can our digital technologies like InterraScan and CropWise and regenerative agriculture best practices help growers manage this challenge? It's just something specific I thought it was important to come back on. Mark?
Well, maybe I'll take that first. One of the benefits I see, and I have got some medium soils on mine, which is drought prone, are that the ability for soils to store water vary quite significantly depending on organic matter and soil texture characteristics. And there are parts of Europe where relatively low organic matter situations can exacerbate drought problems. So actually, a regenerative ag approach that starts to use cover crops and soil roots and maybe even crop residues as well to help build organic matter and store more water in the soil can help to alleviate some of the drought problems. I have to say, in the sad situation that Spain and Italy are going through in certain parts, I think in any system this is going to be difficult. But without doubt, some of the technologies that we've talked about today, in the the new gene technologies, etc., can all work to help us to alleviate some of the pressures of the climate extremes that we're seeing.
Thank you very much indeed. We are almost out of time now. Just one very quick question, Ricardo, I want to put you in. There's a question from Natalie Vernaz about our competitors and coming back to this global competition, putting our whole conversation about accelerating innovation in Europe. The key to making sure that we do it in a way that keeps us competitive. And then from each of you, in sort of 20 seconds each, your key next step. I know I asked you to do it in your own panels on your own topic, but now I want you to look at this holistically and say, for you, the most important priority. But Ricardo, 2 quick words on competition first, if you would.
But if you think competition of Europe against the other market, I would say this is more a question. Well, I think first of all we need to continue to invest in a way in our region, as far as we have key crops that need to be not just be marketed in our market, but also exported abroad. Really areas of key excellence that we need to go through. And to do that, we need to have new technologies in, as I mentioned before. So again, regulators need to really help us to fast introduce this new technology, biological specificals, but also MBT. And really, I think incentivization on the use of digital agriculture tools is going to be a must for growers to be very competitive with our regions as well.
Absolutely. So, overarching key next step, most important thing we need to do above all else, if we are to do this at scale, at speed, in the way that you've all underlined, is so important to meet the challenges that farmers like Hans-Heinrich and Mark face every day in this changing world. Mark, your key next step, overarching priority.
I think demonstrate and build the science.
Thank you very much. Hans-Heinrich.
Nearly the same, but the politic tracks has to be worked on. Without political backing, the region ag practices will doom to fail. We need a rethink there, so the framework conditions that are necessary in various areas are also created. The people have to understand what we do. That's the most important thing, I guess.
Thank you very much, Ricardo.
For me, it's creating a sense of urgency for creating this collective setup of favorable environment for innovation, discovery, and delivery.
Thank you. And Sarah, you have the last word.
So I think from my side, internally, I think we need to continue to accelerate innovation, but with growers really at the center of that. And externally, continue to help audiences like today understand the needs and where we're going, and keep the dialogue going. I think that's what's going to help us in the long run. It's collectively, as you said, collectively working together.
So on that note, I wish we had twice as long. There were some other questions. Unfortunately, I couldn't squeeze them all in. Some were quite specific. But we have heard today why it is so essential to accelerate innovation. And we've heard some examples of how it's actually happening in different areas. And this shows that it is possible to do it. I keep asking about speed and scale. It's shown that it is possible to do it, but we've also talked about what is required if we are going to manage it. So I want to thank our panel very much and all our speakers today for their great contributions to our discussion. If you want to rewatch or share any of the sessions from today, videos and summaries will be available on the Forum for Agriculture website next week, along with other materials from Solutions Week. So thank you again to all our speakers. Thank you so much to you for joining us today and for listening and joining our discussion through the chat. Thank you very much and goodbye.